If you create an object on the wrong layer or with the wrong color or the wrong line type, you can change its properties several different ways. One method you can use to change the properties of an object is to use the Properties palette. To display the Properties palette, you can click on the small arrow in the lower right corner of the Properties panel on the Home ribbon, or switch to the View ribbon, and then in the Palettes panel, click the Properties palette button. You can also display this palette by pressing the Control-1 keyboard combination. The Properties palette behaves similar to other types of palettes. Since it's a palette, it can be moved. You can resize the palette by dragging an edge or corner of the palette. You can also right-click on the title bar of the palette and then use tools in the shortcut menu to move, size, or close the palette, or allow it to dock, which means if I drag it to the edge of the screen, it will actually change shape and dock itself to the edge of the drawing window. Double-clicking on the palette title bar or simply dragging it off will make it floating again. The palette can also be set to hide, so that when I move the cursor away from the palette, it rolls up so that it doesn't take up any more space than a toolbar. When I move the cursor back over the title bar, the palette rolls back out so that I can see the entire palette. I can also control the transparency of the palette. When I right-click and choose this option, the program displays the transparency dialog. Here I can control the transparency of the palette when it's simply displayed, as well as the transparency when the cursor is rolled over the palette. Notice that as I move the general slider bar to the left for less opacity, the palette becomes fainter. I can also adjust the rollover value. Notice that as I increase the general value, it can't be more solid than the rollover transparency setting. You can click the Preview button to see the difference between the general and rollover transparency values. When you're satisfied with these settings, click OK. The advantage of having a somewhat transparent palette is that now, when the palette expands, you can still see the geometry behind the palette. I'm going to right-click again and increase the opacity. Notice that when I right-click on the palette title bar, another option is to anchor the palette on the left or right edge of the drawing area. When the palette is anchored, it appears at the edge of the screen as just a title bar, but when you move the cursor over that title bar, it expands out to show the entire palette. Many people like to work with the palette anchored in this way, because then the palette is actually opened all the time, and simply moving the cursor over the palette causes it to expand so that you can then change the properties of selected objects. This time I'll dock the palette, and notice that it remains visible and takes up some of my drawing window. Look at the top of the Properties palette. Notice that it says No Selection. What that means is, although the Properties palette is open, no objects are currently selected. Therefore, nothing can be modified or changed. But if I select this circle, I can see the Quick Properties palette because it was toggled on down here in the status bar. Notice that the Quick Properties palette displays many of the same properties as the Properties palette. I really don't need to see both of these palettes. Since I can see all of the properties in the Properties palette, I'll turn off the Quick Properties palette. In the Properties palette, I can see that a circle is selected. Now I can use any of the controls in the Properties palette to change any of that object's properties. Notice that if I expand the Color drop-down, as I move the cursor over a color, I can see a preview of what the object would look like using that color. The same is true of the line type and transparency. Not only can I change the color, layer, and line type, I can also change any of the physical geometry properties of the object. I can move the object by changing the X and Y coordinates of its center point. I can also come down here and change its radius, its diameter, and even specify its circumference. So for example, if I know that the circumference of the circle is supposed to be exactly 22 feet, I could click in that field and type in that value, and when I press the Enter key, all of the properties affected immediately change and the circle updates. Once I'm done modifying that object, I can press the Escape key to deselect the object. This time, I'll select not only the circle, but these other objects as well. Notice that when I select multiple types of objects, I can no longer change the physical properties of the geometry. But if I expand this drop-down, I can see the different types of objects that I've selected. I've selected a polyline, a line, and a circle. I can't change the physical properties of all of the geometry at once. With multiple types of objects selected, I can only change the general properties, such as color, layer, and line type. In this case, I'll move all of those objects to the furniture layer. But if I select a specific type of object in the drop-down, such as the circle, I can then modify the physical geometry properties of that object. Once I've made that change, I can move the cursor back over the drawing area, press the Escape key to deselect those objects, and notice that now the Properties palette once again shows me that no objects are currently selected. And if I'm completely done with the Properties palette, I can close it by clicking the Close button, the X in the upper right corner.